Hey, good morning. I'm Richard Rose, and welcome to Exit 1055 Long Island, your TV 1055 show about all things Long Island. In just a few moments, what does Britain's exit from the European Union mean for Long Island companies involved in international trade there? And what should Long Island investors do amidst the continued uncertainty and fallout from Brexit? Some possible answers coming up. But we begin this morning with the back-and-forth battle over whether to place a large solar farm array next to land by the never-opened Shoreham nuclear power plant in Suffolk County along its north shore. A Florida-based solar developer is proposing to clear 350 acres of trees just west of Shoreham. It would be enough to power 13,000 homes with clean energy, but the proposal is dividing residents in neighboring communities.
I believe they should put it in an industrial center, not this center here. The trees are beautiful. They're never going to be replaced.
If it can help with supplying some clean energy to the area, I'm all for it.
Now, Brookhaven town officials say the project will never be approved, arguing it does not fit local zoning laws. Meanwhile, environmentalists themselves are also divided over this proposal, which is under consideration, amongst many others, by LIPA PSEG. And to talk about that is one of the environmentalists who's in favor of the solar array. He's Neil Lewis, the executive director of the Sustainability Institute of Molloy College, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Richard. Good morning.
And we had the town supervisor on a couple of weeks ago against it, so now we want to hear the other side. First of all, why do you favor the proposal in your Sustainability Institute?
Well, we look at it from the big picture. We look at this agreement in Paris where virtually every country in the world came together. Global warming is very real. It's happening at an accelerated pace. We need to take action. So we start with that agreement, and that agreement says that every country needs to have a plan and needs to really start setting, targets and enforceable deadlines. So New York State now has a proposal for this clean energy standard. The governor wants to see us get to 50% renewables by 2030. That's very close, and we're right now on Long Island at about 2%.
That's a long way to go in 14 years.
It really is, and if you look at the governor's formula, it translates for Long Island that we would have to get to about 25%. So when we look at that in terms of solar projects and wind, which are really the two ways we're going to get there, other technologies may come along in future years, but in this timetable, we need a lot of solar and a lot of wind. And this is not the time to start taking projects off the shelf.
Well, we'll get into all that. As I say, environmentalists divided, some for, some against. One in particular in our story, Dick Amper of the Long Island Pine Barrens Society, calling it a terrible idea, saying that trees should not be cut down because they help take carbon dioxide out of the air, which helps the environment, while providing a habitat for wildlife. What about that argument?
Well, I mean, first of all, the CO2 argument is not a strong argument for the trees. There is many other arguments, but clearly...
Why is that it's not a good
solar
argument?
Panels are at least 20 times better, and by some ways of doing the calculations, more than 100 times better at reducing CO2 than the CO2 absorbed by forests.
Because then it's not fossil fuels producing the energy, which are very much contributing CO2.
That's right.
Versus the benefit from the trees taking it out of the atmosphere.
And homeowners that put solar on their home often learn this by going to Google and doing searches saying, is it good environmentally to trim trees or even have to remove 1 or 2 trees around my home before putting solar up? And the calculations are not close. It's far more advantageous. The other point about wildlife, the biggest solar project we have on Long Island is BNL, Brookhaven National Lab, and they did an analysis of the impact of the project. It is very thorough, very professional, and it does show that they allow small wildlife to be able to get under the fence around it. There's a high fence to keep deer out. But otherwise, its environmental impact, it doesn't have a negative impact on our water supply. If anything, there's going to be just as much recharge or perhaps more. Doesn't impact air that we breathe. It doesn't generate truck traffic or other activities at the site. And, really from an environmental perspective, we need to address the dominant environmental challenge of our age, which is global warming.
Well, and your organization plus Citizens Campaign for the Environment say part of the reason you're in favor of this is you're worried that somehow fossil fuel plants will get built, more of them, and that would only make the problem worse. Is there really any likelihood that fossil fuel plants are going to be built when LIPA is saying that we don't really have an energy crunch demand problem for at least another decade?
Well, they're working on this long-range plan, so we're going to have to sort of have that debate when the plan is on the table, because we can have a more intelligent debate. But frankly, just taking the existing power plants, only 10% of the electricity we use on Long Island comes from the most modern fossil fuel plant, and 2% is coming from renewables. So that remaining 88% is coming from old single-cycle plants that are incredibly polluting. Anything we build with solar replaces that old stuff first. So the environmental benefits of putting up solar are tremendous. The one negative is that because of intermittency, you know, when the sun's not shining, nighttime and such, you need a lot of space for solar. That's its negative, and certainly that's what we're seeing with this proposal.
You have the Brookhaven Town Supervisor, Ed Romaine, saying it's dead on arrival because saying the zoning, he was on the show a couple of weeks, doesn't allow it. And he says that what really should be pursued is putting them in parking lots and on rooftops, and that could do the trick.
Right.
Can we get to this goal doing it that way?
Well, I certainly think that there's common ground there, and I certainly respect Supervisor Romaine, and you mentioned Dick Amper, someone I've worked with for many years. So I think we all agree that we want to see the carports, you know, solar on parking lots as the first thing. But by one calculation, there's really only one out there. There's not enough research that's been done on this, but it's about 3,500 acres of large parking lots on Long Island.
That are available for this potential
that
use?
Theoretically could all include solar, understanding that includes lots that are privately owned, and we know
you would never get them all.
Well, one of the biggest realtors on Long Island has said he thinks solar is ugly and doesn't want to put it on any of his property, and he owns a lot of property. So it would be a challenge to get there, but I agree. I think the environmentalists all agree. We want to push for solar on carports, and we want to see a lot more of it. Suffolk County was a leader on that. We have 5 of them on Long Island right now. We'd like to see, you know, many hundreds of them.
But would that be enough, even if you could get all that?
No,
what's the amount that you're projecting it would reach?
We may only get something like 700 or 800 megawatts if we were to get virtually all of those large parking lots from solar. That is maybe in the sort of 10% of what we need to get to. So it's a small number, unfortunately. Again, we need more math on this. Similarly with commercial buildings, the greatest disappointment with solar is we haven't seen more on the commercial buildings. Again, I think we all agreed like to see more of that, but it is complicated. Buildings are often old. There's issues with whether the roof leaks and whether the roof can handle the weight and whether the roof is well designed for solar capture. So yes, I think we at least agree on the idea that we want to focus on the built environment, parking lots and buildings. But I think we also have to be honest with ourselves. That's not going to get us there. Now, of course, solar doesn't need to be 100%. We want wind as a big part of this equation. And of course, any way of generating electricity, there's going to be people who oppose it. The commercial fishermen oppose the offshore wind. They have proven to be very politically powerful. And so it's not going to be easy to get.
So it's not automatic that we're going to get some of these wind projects. So what happens to this proposal now? I know it's one of many that LIPA PSEG is looking at. And
well, I think that's
what happens next?
That's a great question, because I think people may be sort of jumping ahead a little bit. There's a process. So there has to be an environmental review, and that environmental review will look at all the questions of let's protect the bluffs, the best parts of the area. There's 800 acres there. So that environmental review would be key to a lot of the concerns.
Well, we'll certainly be watching this. It's a controversial topic dividing the public, environmentalists, energy companies, pretty much everybody, but we do have to move forward, we all agree. Neil Lewis, Executive Director with the Sustainability Institute for Malloy College, thanks for speaking with us about this today.
Thank you very much, Richard.
And up next,